Hello, good morning. I hope that everybody can hear me. I see that we already have 30 participants, but I give perhaps some more minutes for us to have more people. We have more registration, so we are waiting for a little bit more people. So I just ask for a little bit of patience. Thank you. Yes, hello. I think we already have a sufficient number of participants to start and kick off this meeting. Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to welcome you all today to this webinar. My name is Claudia Oliveira, and I'm currently leading the team on policy in the Interoperable and Digital Government Unit at Digit. I would like to ask you, first of all, to register this and record to this webinar, and we will probably publish it in the portal if okay with everyone. If not, please just write in the chat. As you, so I am also here accompanied by my colleagues who kindly organized this event and are also actually responsible with me to introduce the new interoperable monitoring mechanism under the Act. As you might know, you are perhaps acquainted with NIFO, so the acronym for National Interoperability Framework Observatory, which was a monitoring tool put in place by the European Commission to regularly gather information on the state of play of digital public administration, as well as interoperability activities within the EU member states, as well as associated countries. So its main mission was to monitor the implementation of the revised version of the European Interoperability Framework, so the EIF, as well as to help foster the capacity building policy, as well as modernization of public administrations. This was NIFO. Today, we will introduce you to the new monitoring mechanism, which we have co-designed with you, as well as with our colleagues from the JRC, who published very recently the proposal to the new monitoring mechanism. And this has been done through a series of working meetings in a true co-designed and co-creation approach, and with voluntary member states through a period of, it spans 2 years approximately. So it was extremely interesting also to gather your inputs and to collect all the needs, and in the end to have now what we have as a product and to introduce you. So we are very proud of this, but we also want to, of course, introduce you to this mechanism and show you what we have prepared and to make it very understandable to everybody. I would go to the next slide, please. Thank you, Marta. So we have prepared this agenda. I will go back to a little bit to the agenda. It's going to be my my last slide before I pass the floor to my colleagues. We have prepared this in a way of introducing the why, the how, and then what are the key resources for the next steps. We will also have kind of, let's say, interactive session as much as possible in what we can do for 1 hour. But we wanted to have this kind of to explain in a very comprehensive way how we got here. So why are we monitoring, and why does tracking the progress of interoperability in the end matter? We can go to the next slide, please. And to the next one. Very good. So where are we now? So we are actually we are implementing the Interoperable Europe Act. As you might know, the Interoperable Europe Act entered into force last year in April 2024, and we have celebrated 1 year of the birth of the act, and we are now in the implementation of it, and we have had some milestones, and some of them are here, and all of them are interrelated and actually explain why it is important to have monitoring and how monitoring is transversal and cross-cutting towards all the act and how it is important. So we have the mandatory interoperability assessments, which has been, it's Article 3 from the Act, and it has been, it has also been adopted and entered into, let's say, force in January this year. It was adopted by the board last December. And the assessments are one of these tools that have raised some questions. But as you know, we have also published guidelines in all the languages of the EU, and we have organized some also some coffee talks around the assessments, also to make it more clear. Of course, we are here today also to answer questions that you have about it, if you need. So these assessments, how are they? Why are we talking about them today? Because they are one of the main sources of data for us for tracking interoperability and for the monitoring system that we are going to present to you. Then we have, of course, the solutions. So all of this is part of the Act. So we have the recognized reusable interoperability solutions. What are the solutions? These are the labeled solutions. For the moment, we don't have any labeled solutions. We have many interoperability solutions, but the labeled solutions need to be, need to be actually labeled by the board. And we will have the first ones in December this year, so the current year, but end of the year, adopted by the board as well. So for the solutions, we have them present in different articles of the Act, in this case, in the 4th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And why? The Interoperable Europe solutions will be solutions that are also in a way recognized mutually, also by you and also by the board. so which are the member states and then also Commission, of the, let's say, best practice solutions to use in terms of interoperability. That's why we call them recognized, reusable, and also this very important part of the acts, which is the share and reuse. Then we have another very important part of the act, which is the strengthening support for interoperability. And for this, we have different articles and very much related to innovation, of course. And in this part, of course, GovTech, we need to talk about it, and as well as the interoperability regulatory sandboxes, as well as the peer reviews, but also policy implementation support projects and training. All of this will be monitored so it's asked, so the act asks to monitor. And because we have these elements, we have then translated it into the mechanism that we are presenting to you afterwards. So that is why we monitor it across the EU. It's because it is in any case mandatory. We have provisions, we have a regulation, and we have a regulation that tells us also what we have to do. This is also done in a very co-owned and structured cooperation, and a governance that is transparent in the sense that it has different layers. We have the board, we have the Interoperable Europe community, and we have also the national competent authorities, as well as the interoperability coordinators. All of this we have, after all of this, we also have the Interoperable Europe agenda, and the consultation actually is undergoing until the 10th of July. And we invite all of you to please participate. The agenda is very important. It's a strategic, a very strategic part of the act, and it basically sets the pace to what we are going to want more in the future, but also as of now. And finally, Article 20, which is the article that talks about monitoring and evaluation. So the evaluation will only start in January 2028, so we can leave it a little bit on the side for now. But for the monitoring, as you can see here, it says that it has to monitor, so it shall monitor the progress of the development of trans-European digital public services. We call them TDPS, as you know, the Commission likes acronyms, to support evidence-based policymaking, as well as necessary actions in the Union at national, regional, and local level. So taking this into account, as well as the other parts of the article, we came up with the mechanism that we are going to introduce to you today. We can go to the next slide, please. So we have now two very interesting slides. Why? Because why monitor interoperability across the EU, but that goes beyond the regulation. And there are different reasons why, and we have come up with these 5, let's say, main reasons. The first one is to ensure compliance as well as alignment. Compliance with what? With these common interoperability frameworks, to have more standards and consequently more tools that are used, let's say, transversely across cutting. Also, why it is important to monitor, to track implementation, to track the implementation of and the progress of the efforts to implement interoperability, as well as to monitor the uptake of the common solutions. Common solutions that are recognized by you to be published, as well as by the member states in the board and the governance of the act. Why monitor? Also to identify possible gaps, needs, as well as best practices. We still believe that best practices are very important to understand better how we can move forward. And these also can pinpoint bottlenecks, and we can then share all these best practices among relevant stakeholders. Of course, all of this very much related with the Interoperable Europe portal. Everything is published there, a very rich platform with everything that we need to know about interoperability. Then also, why monitor interoperability across the EU? To support policymaking. It is important to promote evidence-based policy solutions and better target funding. And for this, it is important for the Commission, so for DIGIT, as well as for our colleagues at the JRC, who proposed, so together with them and with you, we have this proposal now, So I also invite you to actually, I will put the link if somebody can do it, otherwise I can do it myself afterwards, after I explain. So we have now this proposal, it's published, and it's a very good document with everything explicit. And this is also very important for us to have this support to policy making, to have something that is co-designed, that is co-owned. Also for you to have it in your, to also want to do it and not something that is imposed. So this is also very important for both Digit and the GRC. So this promotion of everything that is evidence-based. And finally, to promote transparency. So this encourages accountability as well as the delivery of more efficient, as well as inclusive digital public services. We can go on, please. Yes. And again, why does it matter to you? And I think this is always important. It matters because we can save. So it's much more efficient, let's say. We can save approximately, as you see here, with this figure, 24 million hours a year due to an improved public sector interoperability. So we have more efficiency. And you have here, for example, a Belgian retiree receives pension payments abroad without bank fees. So there are many. If we go also to best practices of success stories, or even stories without any success, just stories, we can understand how actually interoperability had an effect on our lives and has, and why it is important to monitor it. Also to have a better service, so to have more quality and reliability. To have also simplified access and the mobility. And for example, this is also very important. Imagine that a graduate from Czechia uses one verified profile to apply to multiple EU universities. We have this example with Wi-Fi, with EduRoam, with all the universities and research institutes. We also it is important to monitor, to have also faster crisis response and protection. And again, a good example, but I mean, the best example we have, of course, is with the candidate country we have now with Ukraine after the Russian invasion. But here it's another example as well. A Lithuanian tourist receives real-time emergency alerts while abroad. And this is also true for all of us across the EU. So it is, as you see, it is relevant, even if we don't see it. It might not appear, but it is something that is in our everyday life. Yes. And before I pass the floor to my colleagues, so as you can see, we go back to the agenda. We explained why it is relevant for you and why we should monitor. But we are going now to the real aspect and to explain exactly how the monitoring mechanism works. And we will then talk a little bit about the key resources and the next steps, but it will have some interaction with Slido questions, also for you to be able to also participate. I'll be here in the background for my colleagues, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Great to see so many people on a Monday morning, bright and early. So my name is Claire. I'm part of the team which is supporting Claudia with regards to the monitoring of the Interoperable Europe Act implementation. And indeed, we're moving on to the next section of the presentation, which is regard how to monitor. So before we go into the how, we have, of course, an interactive element. It wouldn't be a webinar without one. So we're going to start off. We have a Slido here. So if I could just ask for those who are in the call and want to take part, if you could scan the QR code on the screen, and then you'll be able to access the Slido. And we just have two introductory questions before we get into the meat of the presentation. So perhaps will I start with the first question? I think we're just going to share the screen with it as well. Yeah. Super. So for the first question that we have, it's how familiar from 1 to 5 are you with the Interoperable Europe Act and the way its implementation is being tracked? So I see some responses already. So 57% of you so far are saying that you were pretty familiar or relatively highly familiar. Some less so. Thanks everyone for taking part. Okay, so I would say more or less an average level of familiarity, which is good that we're all here today. I hope by the end of this presentation that those numbers might change a bit. Perhaps we could go on to the next question in the Slido, which is a bit of a quiz question. So as of the end of 2023, what was the average level of readiness and implementation of digital public services for citizens across the 27 EU member states, according to the Digital Decade Monitoring? So this is a single choice question. Very close. Okay, so we're a little pessimistic this morning. The correct answer is 79%. So better than we thought. I see most people are voting for 67%. So it's actually 79% is the correct answer. So thank you for taking part. There are going to be some more Slido questions throughout, so keep the link ready that you have. And then we're going to go back to the presentation. Okay. So indeed, Claudia already presented why we should be monitoring interoperability across the EU. We understand we have the Interoperable Europe Act as the starting point. Of course, this section we're now focusing on the how. So to highlight again, a set of indicators to monitor the Act were co-designed. And this was by the JRC, DG Digit, and the member states through a 2-year co-creation process. And we have a series of areas in bold on the slides that are subject to monitoring. So points that we touched upon already, the interoperability assessments, mandatory sharing and reuse of solutions, the EIF implementation, Interoperable Europe solutions, the Interoperable Europe portal, how that supports all of these, GovTech and interoperability regulatory sandboxes, and then also training. So you see the key articles for those who want to do some more reading. These are the main points of reference. Perhaps if we go to the next slide. Another major milestone when looking at the how to monitor interoperability across the EU would be the JRC report. So this is the report, the Interoperable Europe Act, a proposed monitoring framework. We can say that this was really laying the groundwork for the monitoring mechanism as we currently see it today. So the scope of this report and also of the monitoring, we're looking at progress on cross-border interoperability, the EIF implementation across the member states, the uptake of interoperability solutions, open source solutions and GovTech cooperation, and then also skills, so skills within the public sector with regards to digital public services. The timeline of this, like the timeline laid out in the report, as we have short-term indicators, which are referred to as output indicators. So these are being measured first in the first round of monitoring in 2024 to 2025. And then we're also looking at the intermediate term effects and changes. So these are the outcome indicators, and they're going to be measured later from 2026 to 2027 when we have more data available. So my colleague will touch upon this in a few moments in this section of the presentation. In terms of the target audience, we're looking at member states, public administrations, and their public services at different levels of government, and also EU entities that need to apply the Act. And when considering the data collection, the JRC really highlighted that priority should be given to the reuse of existing multi-level monitoring data and the automation of data collection. So in doing this monitoring, we also want to make everyone's and your lives easier as well, and reuse where we can. So perhaps on to the next slide. So as I mentioned, we have a series of indicators and elements that we're using to monitor interoperability across the EU. So here we have just a very high-level overview of the 5 main elements. Element 1 being the progress of Trans-European Digital Public Services, or TDPS, in the Union. Just to pivot here quickly, you might be wondering what are TDPS or what are Trans-European Digital Public Services. So they are digital services. They're provided by union entities or public sector bodies, and they require a degree of interaction. So this can be across member state borders, across union entities, and it's interaction of networks and information systems. Element 2, we're looking at the progress of Trans-European Digital Public Services in the Union. I see a slight typo here. Element 3, the take-up of interoperability solutions for different public services across the member states. Element 4 is the development of open source solutions for public services, public sector innovation, and cooperation with GovTech actors. And then element 5, it's this enhancement of public sector interoperability skills, so also key. The next slides, we're going to be looking at for each indicator, the exact data that's going to be collected, when it's going to be collected, how it's going to be collected, and by whom. And for that task, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Eliana, who has been driving this part of the monitoring activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all today. And I hope that the presentation of the indicator is going to be stimulating some interest there. So as Claire mentioned, there are 5 key elements which are measured by the framework, the monitoring framework. And today we are going to unpack each element, both in terms of output indicator and outcome indicator. Output indicators are the short-term indicators, whereas outcome indicators are more long-term indicator. Before deep diving into the specific set of output and outcome indicators, I would like to remark that this year data collection focused on the construction of the output indicators, and outcome indicators have been identified and defined in the JRC report that Claire mentioned just now, but this will be operationalized in the following months and will be covered during the next year data collection activities. For each of the above mentioned 5 elements, there will be 2 slides mainly. The first slide will outline the purpose, data collection frequency, and data sources for both output and outcome indicators. And then finally, a slide will show you how to locate the most relevant information, links, guidelines within the portal itself. So if we jump into the first set of indicators. So with regards to element 1, which is the measure of progress of trans-European digital public services in the Union, the output indicator measured the total number of TDPS having undergone interoperability assessments, and its key purpose is to understand the initial efforts to advance the interoperability of TDPS. Generally, a high number of TDPS undergoing interoperability assessments indicates proactive efforts to achieve TDPS within the Union. These data are collected annually, and the key data sources is the interoperability assessment reports, which are published in the portal. And the key data that we've been using to measure this indicator is the publication year, the Union entity, the type of TDPS assessed, etc. Looking at the outcome indicator, which, as I mentioned, is under operationalization and will be collected starting from 2026, is the percentage of TDPS with resolved interoperability barriers. And the key purpose here is to evaluate how well interoperability challenges are being addressed and solution implemented. And again, a higher percentage indicates that member states and EU entities are effectively overcoming these obstacles and implementing successful solutions. And again, the data sources for this specific indicator is the interoperability assessment results. And here, the key data that we are going to look at is the resolution status. So now if we go to the next slide, we can see where in the portal the assessment can be submitted. So we invite all of you interested in this kind of activity to go into the portal, the governance tab, and look for the submission form for the interoperability assessment. You will also find other resources such as the interoperability assessment guidelines and a specific course dedicated to the interoperability assessment within the academy. So the next slide, I think that we're going to look at element 2. Before we jump into element 2, feel free to put any questions that you might have on specific indicator in the tab, and to share any comments that you might have at this stage. So element 2 is the measurement of progress towards the implementation of the EIF by member states. And the output indicator is percentage of member states adopting the latest EIF version to provide insights into the progress in the implementation of the EIF itself, and reflecting the member states' readiness to implement interoperability across the EU. Data are collected annually, and key data sources for this year data collection was the self-reported member states EIF adoption and official interoperability documents published after the 2023 survey. Why I'm mentioning this is because for the element 2 outcome indicator, the EIF survey is discontinued. So in the future, the IOPA reports will become the key source of data for this specific indicator. Looking at the outcome, we are going to measure the percentage of TDPS reporting no interoperability barriers to implementation. And the key purpose here is to assess the practical application of the EIF in anticipating and mitigating interoperability barriers, as interoperability assessments use the EIF as a reference for forecasting cross-border interoperability effect. This data will also be collected annually, and they will be derived from the interoperability assessment. For this specific element, we are not going to show you any specific location into the portal, because, as I mentioned, the key source of indicator is going to be the interoperability assessment reports, which can be found in the same space that I just showed you earlier. If we move to element 3, which measure the take-up of interoperability solutions for different public services across member states, the output indicators measure the total number of solutions in the Interoperable Europe portal. And through this indicator, insights into the breadth and scope of interoperability solutions will be provided. By quantifying available solutions, the indicator facilitates trend analysis and identifies areas requiring improvement to support decision-making. The data are collected annually, and the key data source here is the portal solutions catalog. And the key data that we are utilizing for the operationalization of this specific indicator is the ownership, geographical origin, solution source. For the future outcome indicator, the Interoperable Europe Solution Take-Up Index will be developed and measured to provide insight into the extent to which public administration effectively leverage available interoperability solutions. These data will be collected annually starting from next year, and the data sources here see a combination of IOP solution catalog and IOP assessment reports, and some kind of data that can be analyzed for this outcome indicator is mainly the reuse claim, reuse documentation. All these elements can be found, if we go to the next slide, can be found in the solutions section of the catalog, where solution can be submitted and consulted. And for element 4, element 4 measured the development of open source interoperability solutions for public services, public sector innovation, and cooperation with GovTech actors. The output indicator measured the percentage of interoperability innovation measures involving GovTech cooperation. The key purpose here is to provide insights into how effectively support measures are in strengthening collaboration with technology startups and companies in promoting technological advancements for enhancing public service delivery. And data are collected annually, and the data sources for this specific indicator is a mix of different sources, such as the portal, the academy, the public sector tech watch, and GovTech Connect collections. And for this year, we've been using a proxy indicator for measuring this output indicator because no innovation measure have been selected yet, and we kind of thought of providing context information just to on the existing initiatives involving and promoting GovTech collaboration and related to cross-border and interoperability aspects of public services innovation. In the future, as innovation measures will be identified and defined by the board, this indicator will be updated to reflect the newly introduced innovation measures. For example, one of the innovation measures is the regulatory sandboxes, which is under kind of discussion. For the outcome indicator, the percentage of interoperability innovation measures resulting in open source solutions will be measured. And the purpose of this outcome indicator is the measurement of the outcomes of investment to enhance public service, cross-border interoperability, and foster innovation, including efforts to tackle barriers to interoperability or other improvements in service design, delivery, and performance. Data will be collected annually starting from 2026, and data sources will be derived from the portal, as we hope that innovation measures will be identified and provided there. So for what concerns where to locate useful material information and how to use the portal for this specific indicator, which, as I mentioned, for this year is going to focus on the proxy indicator, which we've developed as a GovTech collaboration to understand the GovTech ecosystem. The useful collection that can be consulted in the portal is the GovTech Connect and the Public Sector Tech Watch collection, which should provide useful information on the landscape and uptake of emerging technologies across the EU public sector. Lastly, for element 5, the key measure here is the enhancement of public sector interoperability skills. And looking at the output, what has been measured for this year is the percentage of Interoperable Europe Academy enrolled participants who received training certification. And the purpose of this indicator is to focus on monitoring the enhancement of public sector interoperability skills related to the delivery of trans-European digital public services, thereby enhancing public administration efficiency. Data collection frequency is annual, and the key source here is the Interoperable Europe Academy course statistics, where the key data that we've used is the total number of users and the number of obtained certificates. For the future, when we are going to look at the outcome indicator, the percentage of Interoperable Europe Academy certified participants perceiving significant enhancement in interoperability skills will be measured. Again, here the key objective is to understand the workforce ability to tackle and prevent interoperability issues and how the courses can actually improve the strength of the workforce. Frequency here is annual, and again, the key data source will be the Interoperable Europe Academy course survey, where the perceived skill enhancement and other qualitative feedback will be taken into account to assess the perceived enhancement in interoperability skills. Looking at the portal, if you click on the Academy, all the course can be seen, and learning paths and all resources can be found. I don't know if there are any questions in the chat before I hand over to Claire. But I think that Claire, you can take over while we check the chat.
Super.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So perhaps if we go on to the next slide, it's basically just to wrap up this section before I hand it over to my colleagues for the next part of the presentation. Key takeaways with regards to how to monitor interoperability across the EU. So first of all, we have the obvious link to the Act. So the Interoperable Europe Monitoring Mechanism, it aims to track progress regarding the implementation of the Act's requirements. With regards to data collection, as I mentioned, we're trying to make life easier for everyone here. So there is a prioritization of the reuse of existing data. So for example, IOPEU assessments that have already been submitted, and also the automation of data collection as well. The scope, as Eliana has kindly presented, and Claudia as well at the start, we're looking at progress being made on cross-border interoperability. We're looking at the level of EIF implementation, the uptake of interoperability solutions, open source solutions and GovTech cooperation, and then also skills development in the EU. And stakeholders, I'm looking at 87 people here in this webinar and beyond. So we're looking at representatives from governments at all levels. So this is national, regional, local, and then also EU entities as well. So that's it on the how to monitor interoperability. Of course, I'm sure some of you may have some questions, so do please drop your questions into the chat or get in touch after. In the meantime, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague and they're going to present the next steps and key resources. So looking at the level of interoperability across EU countries and what resources can help enhance it. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Claire and Eliana. Actually, we have a question in the chat, but I'm not sure whether we can leave it for the Q&A session later, if that's all right. And we can continue. So up till now, we have seen, well, I see Claudia there. Did you want to?
No,
Okay.
only if I saw that you were going to, I can reply to the questions, but I can do it afterwards during the Q&A, of course.
Okay, then let's leave them for the Q&A so we get also some discussion, if that's all right, by Denise. So yeah, we've been looking at why monitor, so why tracking the progress of interoperability, why does it matter, like for you, for Europe in general, how to monitor. So Eliana and Claire have been taking us through the steps and the operationalization of all the indicators, how to monitor this interoperability across the EU. And now you may be curious, okay, so what are the outputs? What's the result of this monitoring? How are member states doing at EU level? And what key resources are there to improve as a member state, as a local administration, our level of interoperability? So we're gonna dive into that just now. So just to say, and also link to the previous section, that there will be two nice resources coming in our collection, the one that Claudia was mentioning, Interoperable Europe Monitoring Collection in the portal, that are coming in autumn 2025. And these are the annual report on interoperability in the Union. So this is our report. We have done a first data collection, and the insights and the result of this data collection will be reflected in this report. You'll be able to access the progress of cross-border interoperability and trans-European digital product services. So all the barriers, all the drivers, the results, you'll find them in this report. Also, in addition to the report, we'll have a complementary resource, which is a dashboard of these 5 indicators that Eliana was just now describing. So you can play with the filters and check what is the performance of all the EU countries in regards to the Interoperable Europe Act. So just stay tuned. And if you want to stay tuned and access these resources in autumn, we recommend that you access this QR code. If you scan it, you'll go to our landing page of the collection. This is the Interoperable Europe Monitoring Collection, where if you click on Join the Collection, you can receive notifications whenever we upload new content, such as news, events like this one, or other materials that could be interesting to you. So if you join the collection, you'll receive a notification when in the autumn we publish these 2 resources that I just mentioned. And of course, in this collection, not only we have news and events, but you'll also find best practices, solutions that you could find and reuse. And as well, you can propose your own best practices and solutions. So the idea is that we create this collaborative space in which we can all reuse and share our resources. And of course, you'll also have the opportunity to engage with others. So for example, asking more questions about content that they published, you can engage with them in discussions. so we highly encourage you to dive in and to search the collection. Actually, we have a small demo of the collection later on. In a few minutes, we'll go together to the collection so you are more familiarized with it. But before diving into the collection, we just wanted to show you a bit what we have in the collection. So you'll find, firstly, a lot of information. So this is information on how member states, how European Union is doing in terms of interoperability. And so to show this, we have fact sheets, so digital public administration fact sheets. We have case studies and initiatives per country, and also at EU level. We have monitoring dashboards, like I was saying, where you can filter and access data and filter by country, filter by year, so you can find the results interactively. We also have reports on many different aspects related to digitalization, to interoperability. So so you will find all this type of information. Also, you can find some resources that can help you, that support you in your journey towards interoperability and can help you align the EIF, the European International Framework, and the Act's requirements to your national strategies or national frameworks. So we have solutions that are aligned with the EIF, for example, that you can use and implement nationally. We have trainings, best practices. So these are, let's say, resources that can help you improve your interoperability levels. Lastly, we have engagement activities such as this one, this webinar that we are actually in right now, workshops, webinars, news, coffee talks, all these sessions to share best practices. For example, here we have peer review sessions. These are sessions requested on demand by member states, in which two member states sit at a table and share best practices about a topic, and we do that virtually. So this is an example of just how we try to encourage engagement and best practice sharing. But yeah, with no further delay, what we can do together is go to the collection. So I'll just guide you through how it looks like now, because we have just been doing some changes and it looks brand new. So I'm going to share the screen here. Right. So this is the new collection that we have just modified and with a greater look and feel, just to align with the Act and its requirements. And so you can find also all the resources in an intuitive and user-friendly manner. As I was saying before, if you want to stay updated on all that's coming, all the new updates, you can just come here to join the collection button and click on it. And I want to be notified when content is published, so I know the latest updates and I confirm. And now, as you can see, I'm already a member of this collection. That's great. We are now 320 members. And so this is our landing page. The idea of this collection is that you'll find these main entry points to find documents, reports, all the kind of resources that give you a bit of a sneak peek or information on the state of interoperability and digital government in the European Union. And so this collection is structured in three pillars. First, the first pillar is the policy context. So first, we want to show you'll find all the frameworks that defined what these interoperable trans-European digital public services are. Because with this policy context and these frameworks, then we can go to the next pillar, which is, okay, these are all the reports, all the fact sheets, all the dashboard that account on the progress of these interoperable trans-European digital public services. So first is policy context, then how we are doing in terms of the state of art. And then the third part is what are the resources that can help you improve your interoperability level. So these are clickable. You can click here and we'll go to each of these sections now together. But first, just wanted to give you a bit of an overview here. You can find our vision, our mission, what we do, and how you can contribute, and a bit of information on the Act. And of course, here are some events and some news that you can have a look after. All right, then let's click on the policy context to understand what are the frameworks that are underlying all this monitoring. So this is just a quick map of all the digital regulations that have to do and programs that have to do with the digitalization in the European Union. We wanted to lay them down clear for you to understand. And the monitoring is basically based on 4 key programs and frameworks. The first is the Interoperable Europe Act, which we have been talking a lot about in this presentation. We have the EIF, which you may already be familiar with it for sure, the Digital Decade Program, and the Digital Decade and the Digital Europe Program. Here here you can find also, if you're not sure what these programs are or how they relate to this initiative, the Interoperable Europe Monitoring, you can browse and find how they interact. So for example, the Interoperable Europe Act says the governance structure for improved cross-border interoperability, and the Interoperable Europe Monitoring tracks the objectives. And we track this by monitoring all the indicators that Eliana and Claire were mentioning earlier. And so you have this for all the different, for example, the Digital Europe Program funds the development of public services transformation, digital transformation, and monitoring. Interoperable Europe Monitoring tracks the effectiveness and adoption of this DEP funded solution. So you have all the information here. If you want to access the different frameworks, you can also click here and you will be redirected to the official pages. And so this is the policy context. But okay, we want to know what is the state of digitalization, the state of interoperability at the country level and at EU level. So you can click on this knowledge center and you can even try to understand why this page could be interesting to you. For example, clicking on your profile. So if you're a public servant, this page can help you to discover country data and best practices on digital government across the EU. And this can be helpful to inform policymaking at different levels of government. So we have this for different profiles. Okay, so now we have resources at country level, and we have also resources at EU level. At country level, we have some key resources. I'm going to click here so we can see. These resources are the fact sheets. So this is a 2-page document that summarizes key initiatives. You may already be familiar with this document. We have governance bodies, so those agencies, bodies that are responsible for digital administration policies, and we have best practices. If you'd like to submit any of resource, you can we have here all the countries, but if you feel like your country is missing one key resource, one initiative, you can come here below and add a best practice for your country, for your administration at all levels. Yeah, we can go quickly to, for example, one of the countries. So we can choose Belgium. So you see how the country fish looks like. Here we have the fact sheet of Belgium. So the first thing you'll see the fact sheet, you can click here and this is the fact sheet. So you can have a look. We also have fact sheets from previous years. You can access the Belgium framework. We have initiatives and best practices that you can find here. And as I was mentioning before, you have all the governance structures at national, regional, and different levels. Here is great. Okay, so this is at country level. Okay, we're 7 minutes, so I'll try to cover everything. But we also have resources at EU level. So if you want to see how the European Union is doing at its whole regarding interoperability progress, then we have EU monitoring reports. So we have here the annual report. This is the placeholder place when we'll put in autumn of this year the report that will be published on the annual interoperability of the Union. So stay tuned for this report because it's going to be quite insightful. And then here you have previous reports from year C. This is the report that Claudia was just mentioning on the proposed monitoring framework. Okay, I'm going to go to, and then here you have monitoring results. This is where you'll be able to find, the dashboard that's coming that I also mentioned in autumn. So also stay tuned for this dashboard. But if you want to consult the previous dashboard, monitoring dashboard for the EIF, the Building Declaration Monitoring, you can also click here and access them. And here you have the fact sheet of the EU. So we also have not only a fact sheet per country, but also have at EU level. So this is the fact sheet of the EU. This is actually you can see it here, the e-health record. This is the answer to our poll that we had just earlier with the Slido. So yeah. And lastly, you have here a monitoring toolbox where we have solutions that you can filter by link to the EIF, so the Interoperability Framework. So you can filter here some solutions and they will appear below. And last but not least, we have some courses that you can help you to understand better the EIF. We are also working on a course to help you with the new monitoring mechanism. And here you have a section on news and events. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to also leave them in the chat. What I'm going to quickly do is we have perhaps we also want to do some questions. We'll go quickly to Slido, unless we want to already. Here it is. So we have, you can scan this code at the left side, and we have the two last questions to close the webinar.
While people do that, the QR
Yes.
codes, I will actually reply to the questions we already have on the chat, if that's okay. Thank you so much, Marta, for the overview of the website. As you see, we had a lot of work with the revamping, and thank you, Eliana, for the overview on the monitoring mechanism. And we have two good questions, actually. The first one, what are the touch points between the Act, so the Interoperable Europe Act, and the Data Act, especially regarding transnational cooperation between regulatory bodies, according to the Data Act? And the second one is, what are the intentions of certification? Are there a long-term vision or certified experts allowed doing some specific kinds of work? So for the first question, and very briefly, because otherwise we could go, I mean, kind of more in detail for the Data Act. But so both acts are closely linked in how they support the EU at the EU level, digital goals of the EU. The Interoperable Europe Act ensures that public administrations can work together seamlessly across borders. And doing this by promoting, of course, common standards as well as interoperability. The Data Act focuses on fair access to the reuse of data, including by public bodies. Where they really connect, that's why the question is so interesting, is on transnational cooperation indeed. But the Interoperable Europe Act provides the tools and the governance, for example, like the Interoperable Europe boards, to support joint action, while the Data Act calls for coordination between national authorities and the Commission on how data is shared and reused. So both regulations help ensure that data flows, as well as the services work more seamlessly across borders, more consistently, let's say, and also in a more interoperable way. Regarding the certification, so under it's an interesting question because it's a tricky question. So under the Interoperable Europe Act, certification is not mandatory. I would like to also make this very clear, but the intention behind it is also very clear. To make it more professional, in a way, the trainings, as well as to harmonize the way public administrations, as well as different stakeholders who take the different trainings, implement interoperability across the EU. So I would say that the intention of certification in the Act is to build trust, as well as also quality, as well as consistency in how interoperability is applied across member states. So it's not compulsory, but it also aims to have this kind of acknowledgement and recognition of expertise for all those involved in the in digital public services, in evaluations, or in design of those. So I hope that I answered the questions, and I don't know if we have the Slido questions, or if we have time. We still have 2 minutes.
We have one more question in the chat, actually. How does Interoperable Europe monitoring framework relate to the Interoperable EU rolling plan for the ICT standardization?
That's also a good question. How can I answer that? I could say that I mean, the monitoring framework, so the monitoring mechanism as it is today, tracks member states and EU entities. So the progress, let's say, of implementation and of interoperability in practice. So it is based on indicators. The rolling plan for ICT standardization, it's different because it identifies priority areas where standards or standardization is needed, including digital government, data and interoperability. So I would say that the two are complementary in a way that the new mechanism for the IOPEU monitoring mechanism highlights where the gaps exist in interoperability. The rolling plan helps ensure that the standards are developed and promoted to fill the gaps, the existing gaps between the different services. So they are complementary because they also align monitoring policy, etc.
We have one more question. I don't know, since we have one more minute.
Yes, it's can implementation and use of interoperability by trust service providers be considered as part of element 4 when monitoring interoperability. I don't know if I understand completely the question, but I don't know if the person is still here and would like to tell me exactly what they mean with trust service provider. Or is it digital public service in general? But if it is, I mean, my answer, my like straightforward answer would be yes, absolutely, because the implementation and the use of different interoperability mechanisms are done by trust service providers and can also be considered part of element 4, of course. But for me, it depends. For example, if we are talking about trust service providers in terms of EID, seals, this kind of identity services, yes, definitely, because these are critical enablers for everything that is cross-border digital public service. And then we have, we can say that, for example, the IADES contributes directly to element 4. Since it assesses whether interoperability is effectively embedded in the real world services. So in that sense, yes. Yeah, so I would say yes. So I answered the question.
Yes.
Apparently. So it is exactly, it's IADES and it has to do. Very good. Great.
Thank you, everyone. I think that we need to close the webinar, but if you have any other questions, you can also write to our functional mailbox, and we'll try to answer them all. Also, take some time to go through the collection. I think that a lot of answers you will also find there. But really, we will also send one follow-up email with all the resources, and then you can also use that opportunity to reach to us with any follow-up questions. Thank you very much for your participation, and see you in our next webinar.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.